Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight with Sandalina, and I'm your talk show host, Sandalina Sattar. Today's special guest is Govindan, who is a South Asian stand-up comedian and writer who just wrapped up her international tour. You may recognize her from her opening acts for Russell Peters, Hasan, Minhaj, and Daniel Sloss, as well as her features on Vogue India, NBC, and BBC. Thank you so much for coming on.
I am so excited to be here.
So welcome to the first segment of this episode, the 5-minute life story. Let's dive into the deep end and start from the origins of who you are. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up.
I was born in Lubbock, Texas,
Okay.
which is like in the middle of nowhere, because my dad was doing his MBA at Texas Tech. And then when I was 3, we moved to New York City so my mom could do her residency. She's a physician.
Wow. Okay.
And then after my mom finished her residency, she got offers from hospitals in New York and Ohio, but she turned them all down because she hated the cold weather. They both hated the cold weather because they grew up in South
Valid
India.
reason to leave.
Yeah. So she got a job offer from Houston, which is like her dream city in terms of weather. And so we moved down there when I was 8, and I was there until I graduated high school.
And what's the demographic like over there? Are there a lot of Desi people?
So many Desi people, so
that's what I
many
hear.
South Indian people.
Okay.
The temple that I grew up going to, Meenakshi Temple, is like just all Tamil and Telugu people. And it's all a lot of Tamil and Telugu people who grew up in South India with no winter and just didn't want to experience one.
Yeah.
And I really carry so much Houston pride. It's so multicultural. And I credit the Houston Indian community with shaping me as who I am today. And then I went to New York City for college, and in college I started doing stand-up comedy in my junior year.
So where did you go to college, and what exactly did you start out majoring in?
I switched my major 6 times. I talk
Love
about
that.
it in my solo show, yeah.
Okay.
And I went to Fordham University.
Okay.
And I ended up majoring in psychology.
Nice.
And in my junior year, so I had been begging my parents to help me pay for stand-up comedy classes all through college. And their whole thing was like, just focus on your studies. We'll, you can do the stand-up comedy thing or whatever you want, like after you graduate, just get the degree. And then in my junior year, I went through a breakup so bad that I was calling them every day crying. And then one day my mom called and she was like, what can we do to cheer you up? Because you're so sad. And I was like, can you help me pay for comedy classes? And they were like, fine. So they paid for half of my comedy classes at the iconic Caroline's on Broadway, which has since shut down. It didn't survive the COVID pandemic.
Okay.
And truly the rest is history. Like I started doing weekly stand-up classes. I had my stand-up debut in December 2017 at Caroline's on Broadway, which is like a very meaningful credit to have on my resume.
Yeah.
And then I immediately went to Dublin and studied abroad in Ireland. And I was doing open mics in Dublin. I was actually studying abroad like an hour outside of Dublin. And I did open mics in Dublin. And then I went viral on Irish Twitter.
And how was that doing that in Ireland? Because I imagine there aren't that many people that look like us over there in that neck of the woods. So were you quite literally the only person doing that?
It was me and like one other Indian comedian, but now in Ireland there's very many Indian comedians.
Really?
Like even in the course of the last 7 years, like the demographics of stand-up comedy all across the world have changed so significantly.
Okay.
Came back to do my senior year and continued going viral on American Twitter and developed this following and decided in my senior year that I really wanted to focus on trying to do stand-up as a career. And so after I graduated, I moved home while I was trying to figure out how I could monetize it. And then my parents and I were like constantly getting into these like humongous screaming matches.
I was going to ask how that went down. Yeah.
And we just like butt heads. Like I felt like my parents didn't even want me alive. So I attempted suicide and I was hospitalized following the suicide attempt.
Wow.
But then after I was hospitalized for a suicide attempt, my parents really rallied around me and like focused on improving my mental health and provided so much support.
Yeah.
And then once I was able to really take the time to focus on myself and improve my mental health and improve my relationship with my parents, I felt more ready to take on stand-up comedy as a career. And so after living at home from like 2019 to 2022, I moved here March 19th, 2022. And so my 3-year anniversary of moving here to do stand-up full-time was like a couple weeks ago.
Wow. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's
I'm so happy to be here.
huge.
Thank you.
I do have a couple questions on the mental health piece. We can get a little bit more on that later. Before we do, I just want to give the audience a quick snapshot of who you are in the present. So you're on tour right now, right?
I just finished my tour.
So tell us a little bit more about the tour you just wrapped up.
Yeah, so it's the national preview tour. I went international, actually. My last stop was a couple of days ago in London. And I am going off Broadway day after tomorrow on Wednesday. And so the solo show is about the story I just told you, the attempted suicide, and how my parents rallied around me and how it really put into perspective our relationship. Like, I realized that they didn't extend me a lot of empathy when I told them I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. They were very mean to me. But then after they rallied around me following my attempt, I realized I didn't extend them a lot of empathy by like flattening them into like a one-dimensional narrative of being like, my evil Indian parents will never understand why I want to be a stand-up comedian, and like, oh, this sucks and stuff. And watching them change in a way that I would have never thought possible in like 2019 made me realize that all of us are just experiencing life for the first time. Yes. And that showing them grace was really important, and that I had to see them for who they were, which is just people living life and trying their best. And it really made my journey a lot easier in terms of my healing journey and figuring out what to do next. And I think that once my parents were supportive, not only of my mental health journey, but also of my stand-up journey, that's when my career started flourishing, because having that support really plays like a pivotal role in like my risk-taking ability, my resilience, and stuff.
A lot of creators in New York can relate to this, right? It's like you have these dreams and these passions, and you feel like you have to butt heads with your parents a little bit. But I think it's really important for South Asian parents to understand the impact of force, right? There's not always positive outcomes from what you think is best for your children. So welcome to segment 2, the hot seat segment. So we're just gonna ask you rapid fire questions very quickly. We have 5 minutes top. What's your favorite city to perform on tour?
Washington, D.C. Like, every single time I go there, I feel like a celebrity because I sell out like shows. I had to add back-to-back shows the last time I went. I sold out Union Stage.
I know that you opened for Hasan at that Houston show.
Yeah.
What's your favorite piece of advice that Hasan's given you?
LOL. Oh my God, this is a hilarious question. This is my first time telling the story on the record. In 2021, I emailed Hasan's team and I was like, can I open for him in Houston? And one of them replied and was like, yep. And I was like,
wow.
I was like, what? I was like so confused by the lack of caveat. And then I responded and I was like, do you want a video? And they were like, nope, see you in Houston. The 2 shows were like 12,000 people. And I was 23 at the time. Like, I was just like, oh my God, that is like so much faith to have in me. I was backstage the day before I had a breakdown. My mom was like, what is wrong with you? I was like, it's 12,000 people. What if I mess up? She was like, it's fine. You're not going to mess up. And then I was backstage and I ran into Hasan. Of course, it's his show. And I was like, I'm just like, you didn't even ask to see a video. And he was like, I don't need to see a video. Like, you're Abby. Like, what? And I was like, that's so nice to say. Like, what are you talking about? And listen, it's not that I'm famous. It's that he's nice. Like, let me be so clear that he wasn't like starstruck by me because I have a few thousand followers on Twitter. He's just so nice. And then I was like, well, what if I mess up? Like, what if I mess up in front of all these people? And he was like, with all due respect, they're here for me. So if you do well, that'll be good for you. And if you don't do well, it'll be a funny story for both of us to tell. And I was like, that's so right. And it like just really eased me up. The audience was so nice. And I booked so many gigs from the one night that I opened for him in Houston that I was able to afford to just up and move to New York City from that one night. And any comedian who has opened for Hasan or collaborated with him in any way will tell you that that's just how he is. He's always lifting a hand up. He's always just being very kind.
Yeah.
And
he's mentored a couple other people on the show as well too, and they all have the exact same thing.
A lot of my career has of course been talent and hard work, but also a lot of my career has been very talented people with bigger platforms than me giving me a chance purely because they saw like pluck in me or whatever. Like, is that the word?
They saw your talent.
Well, they like more than talent, it's the desire. It's like the hunger. And so I have an always say yes policy. If anyone asks to open for me, I always say yes because, you know, I opened for Russell Peters. I didn't even ask to open for Russell Peters. Like, I was backstage at a show because I was friends with his opener. And then Russell was like, are you a comic? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, do you want to do 10 minutes? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. and then I opened for my friend Daniel Sloss when he was in Houston. And that was also like opened a lot of doors for me. So it's just like, I realized that no one ever is hurt from opening the door for others. Yeah. And there's like, I succeed when more people succeed. Yeah. Like I find success in helping my friends get opportunities because that just means that more of us are here to enjoy the spotlight.
Have you ever dated somebody funnier than you?
Never.
What is your craziest date story?
I don't go on many dates. I feel like I don't have any
busy also.
Yeah, I am busy. I went on one date in December, and his profile said like engineer at tech, and then I got to the date, and I was like, oh, so what tech company? And he was like Lockheed Martin. I was like, oh my god. So now I barely go on dates as is. Now if a guy has engineer at tech in his bio, which
he's a murderer, obviously.
Many of them do.
Yeah.
I'm always like, hey, so which tech company before like any other.
Yeah.
And now because I only really date South Asian guys. So now enough of them have seen it that they'll respond and they'll be like, don't worry, I don't work at Lockheed Martin.
Good. That's a good filter to have.
Yeah,
there you go. If you weren't a comedian, what would you be doing right now?
Oh, I love this question. That's such a thoughtful question. Thank you for asking. I would be working in something to do with animals or conservation or the environment. I'm like so
sweet.
Moved by the environment. I'm partnering with the Aura Foundation for my off-Broadway show. Like,
wow.
I think we only have one Earth and that everyone should take it more seriously. I'm really concerned about like animal rights and animal welfare, the way that we treat, like chickens and cows at slaughterhouses. And so I think I would be doing something like that, like something in conservation.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be making a lot of money. I'm not making a lot of money now, but I think that I've always led with the money isn't important. I just want to love what I do. Like I want to wake up every day and be like, this is exactly where I belong. So
yeah. No, I completely agree.
No one's ever asked me that question. That's so
really?
nice.
Nobody's asking you that.
Yeah.
Wow. No, that's like a first.
It's always like, how does your Indian identity affect your comedy? And I'm like, come on, like the same 10 questions over and over.
Yeah. What's something white guys dating brown girls always say? Inspired by some of your content, I will say.
Clearly. I think they love to explain their knowledge of the Mughal Empire. I'm like, okay, we get it. Yeah.
That one does ring true. What's a joke that you won't ever tell on stage?
I had a joke that I axed just because I think I might revisit it actually, but I was talking about how my grandma used to call me like dark and unmarriageable, and she got married at age 14 to my grandpa who was 20 years old at the time. And I loved my grandfather when he passed away. I think when I learned that age difference between them, I learned to hold the two conflicting feelings of like my grandfather was only ever kind and sweet to me, and also that like the men that we love in our life can cause, or not even cause, because my grandma loved him as well, but they can do things that are beyond our comprehension. There's duality, yeah. We can love someone and also hate what they're doing. But I had a joke that was like, my grandpa was the only one who could soothe me when I was a kid. Like I would start crying and my parents would be like, she needs to go to her grandpa. And he would always like pull out like a Mentos from his pocket. He always had a Mentos in his front pocket somehow. And I was like, it's such a grandpa thing. And then I realized he probably learned because he had a literal child bride. Like his child bride was like crying because he didn't get her favorite Baby Alive doll or whatever. And then he had to pull out a Mentos and be like, it's okay. So that was like the foundation.
It's a good joke.
Thank you. It was the foundation of the joke. I think that I need to work on the delivery and the setup. Like I think that as I tell it now, you're like, that's so tragic. And it is tragic, but also it's a joke made at the expense of my grandmother who was mean to me. So it's, you know what I'm saying?
There's layers
and I have to be more nuanced about
that. Makes sense. That makes sense. No, but thank you for sharing that. Even though I gasped initially, I still think that it's workable material.
Is this gonna get me canceled?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. If you could only roast one group of people for the rest of your life in your comedy sets, what would the group be?
Wait, this is so funny. Tech bros. Easily tech bros. Easily tech bros, like, and not even in the, like, I know that, like, tech bros make fun of themselves, but not in that way. Like, in the, like, God, how soulless can you be? Or I read an article recently that was like, young people are leaving tech in droves. And I was like, finally, young people are getting spines. And then the article said, everyone wants to work in defense tech.
What?
Like Lockheed Martin, General.
Like
General Defense, like Raytheon. And I was like, oh my God, have we lost shame as like a generation of people?
Actually, yeah.
So defense tech, whatever the fuck that means.
Wow. And last question, by the way, I wrote this one before you shared what you shared, but are you funny because of your trauma?
No, I don't think so. I think that I've always had like sharp wit and a comedic ear for like taking material and writing a punchline.
Okay.
And I do know the whole like my trauma makes me funny is like so in right now to say.
Yeah.
And maybe there was a version of me in 2018, and maybe you could even find a tweet where I say something like that. I don't know. Like I don't even remember half the things I tweeted. But I think that 2025 me has grown past romanticizing my trauma as opposed to accepting that it's a part of my journey.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that I would be here regardless of the bad things that happen to me, if that makes sense. Like the bad things that happen to me give me material to draw punchlines from, but I would like to think that my comedic talent is so eternal and was so destined to be successful that I would be here regardless of if I attempted suicide or if, I had like traumatic breakups or what have you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that concludes our hot seat segment. So now we're going to move on to our next segment. This is going to be segment 3, the shadows. So this is where we talk about the topics beneath the surface that social media and the rest of the world doesn't always see. So we're going to start off with the question, what keeps you up at night these days?
This off-Broadway production, oh my God, it's the first time I've ever been a lead of a team, and I realized that no matter how stressed I'm feeling, I have to be very even-keeled because that's the least I could do for the people who are helping me put my dream production together. Or it's costing like $40,000 to put together, and I'm kind of the face of, I am definitely the face of the project, so I have to fundraise to cover that $40,000. Of course, I'm stressed about that, but at the end of the day, I keep having to remind myself that like I'll make it work. Things have worked out in the past. If this is a loss of $8,000, what that means is that I paid everyone fairly. People who partook in it believed in my vision and my ability to execute it. And I'm trusting in myself to sell tickets and fundraise so that I don't lose the $8,000. But even if I do lose the $8,000, I'm betting on myself that I'll make that money back somehow.
Yeah. I'm sure as a South Asian creator on the internet, that's woman, you've received hate comments. I know a lot of women on this show that have, men too, by the way, but I do think the women have it much worse. Do you read them?
No.
How do you handle them when they first started coming in?
So part of the thing that pushed me to attempt suicide was partially online bullying. And so what I learned while I was in the hospital and through extensive individual and group therapy is to control what I can control and let go of what I can't control. And that really helped me. My therapist told me that looking up my name or looking up comments under videos to specifically with the purpose of seeing negative comments is called digital self-harm.
Wow.
And when she framed it for me like that, it really changed the way that I looked at it because I would never pull out a knife and harm myself. I lead my days with, like empathy and kindness, and I try to write jokes that I feel like will resonate with people without punching down. And I know that at any given point, I'm trying my best. And if I feel like I've let anyone down, I'll be honest with them about it and I'll apologize. Like all I can do is work towards becoming a better person. And some people will see that, or some people won't see that, or some people will see it and feel like I'm not doing enough. All of those are valid opinions. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but I can only control myself and what I do at any given moment.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. And I
Thank
think
you.
there are a lot of important lessons for the audience to take away too. I know that some of the people that consume this show are also creators themselves. And it's important to draw the line and understand like what is actually productive and beneficial to be viewing, right? In terms of feedback from the masses and what's just destructive. We've talked about this a bit off camera before recording too, but it feels like there's a trend, right? When it comes to comedians and mental instability, right? And I think there's a few reasons for this. One, I do think that, and I want to get your take, but this is just as a non-comedian, this is why I would think it's a phenomenon. People that are funny because they see the world for what it is. I find the funniest people I know are also the most depressed people I know. I wanted to get your perspective. Mm-hmm. Why?
I've read so many think pieces about like Robin Williams committed suicide, even though he was single-handedly responsible for a generation of joy. And I think that, like I said earlier, like it's always like, oh, do you think your trauma makes you funny? And I'm like, no, I think I made my trauma funny, if anything. Like I think that I would be funny no matter what. I happened to go through things that really affected my mental health, and I turned them into jokes. And I think that the reason that comedians are so consistently doing poorly mental health wise is on top of having the ability to be observational in the world and see the world for what it is and maybe see the world more clearly than the average person.
Right.
There's also a lot of pressure in this industry. There's a lot of competition amongst us. There's a lot of like, how many tickets did I sell? How many followers do I have? And then on top of that, when you're a comedian of color or if you're a female comedian, we're made to feel like there's even fewer spots that we all have to compete for. Knowing that everyone's on their own journey and everyone's on the path that's right for them like really helped me move at my own pace. I parted ways with my agents, and my agent specifically was a really nice person, but of course my agents, their job is to get me as famous as quick as possible. And so my agent and I had a conversation where she was like, hey, we're sending you these TV and movie roles. Like, why aren't you submitting them? Like, why do you let them expire? And I told her, I was like, I'm not chasing fame. Like, I hate the idea of being famous. I love stand-up comedy more than I hate the idea of being famous. I'm doing exactly what feels comfortable to me. If I get a TV role or a movie role and tomorrow like skyrocket and get like 2 million, 3 million followers, I don't know if I could handle, if my mental health could handle that kind of visibility. Seems like when you're an Indian woman in the public eye, like it's kind of inevitable that something that you've said in the past or something that people find uneasy or unsettling will just be debated to death. And I know that if that, like as someone who attempted suicide, what we learn in therapy is that we try to decrease our chances of relapsing to as close as to zero as possible, but it'll never be zero. So I know that tomorrow, if I went through what the average famous Indian person goes through online, I don't know if I have the resilience to survive that. So I'm like literally taking this as at my level of comfort. Right now I have this cult following that really shows up, sells out most, if not all of my shows. Yeah. And I really value them. But at the end of the day, you really have to do exactly what you're capable of because no one will take care of you or advocate for yourself like you do. And my agent was my friend. I really liked her. But at the end of the day, the relationship wasn't working. And so
incentives have to be aligned.
Yeah.
And it feels like there was a misalignment there, which is fine. That's part of being in the industry. I really appreciate you opening up about the mental health piece about it because I think it's very easy to assume, right, as a consumer of content, that if somebody talks about a suicide attempt or mental health in the past tense, that must mean that they're fine now. And everything's 100% great now. And that's the guise of the past tense in normal day-to-day conversation. But thank you for opening up about the fact that, it's still an ongoing thing and who knows what the future brings, but you are doing what you can to control what's within your reach.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is your approach to what success means personally for you, not what it means to your agent, not what it means to anybody else that's going to get a commission off of you. What does it mean for you?
Yeah, exactly.
So I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm only able to do this at my own pace because the South Asian community really shows up for me in the ways that really mean the most. Like at the end of the day, like the reason I'm able to pay my mortgage, the reason I'm able to buy groceries, the reason I'm able to buy the nice food for my cat is because my shows sell well enough that I'm able to live on my own and make this happen on my own. So I know that a lot of people who feel similarly to me about visibility and about being overworked who aren't able to set those boundaries because like every job or every opportunity is a paycheck that they absolutely have to take. So I'm really grateful that I exist in this space where I can do everything like completely on my own terms. I'd never do anything I'm not comfortable with, which is really nice.
I completely agree with that. I love that notion. And to wrap up, I'm going to share a quote from one of your friends. It actually echoes a lot of what you talked about already about meeting people after shows and such. But it was just a friend commenting on how kind you are and inclusive you are. The quote goes, "She's always really big about meeting every and anybody that wants to after her shows and always makes an effort to include them in plans she makes after the show. It's like an after party where everybody's invited."
Oh, that's so nice. Who said that?
Reza.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh my God. Reza, the reason that this podcast episode is happening. Shout out.
Thank you so much, Reza, for the invite to your birthday. All right, great. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the final segment of the show, which is the Spotlight segment. So the headline for the Spotlight segment is Tamil Girl Dominates Comedy. Let's talk about your origin. So you mentioned off camera that you started off on Muslim Twitter, but to be clear, you're not Muslim.
No, I'm not Muslim.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about how that happened. Also, can we convert you by the end of the episode?
It's just one sentence, right? You could convert me, and you can say it in any language. Like you can say it in English.
I love that you know that. Oh my God, I love that you know that.
I just have so many Muslim friends that I like know.
Yeah.
Like
I have dates in the back if you want to do a fast with me tomorrow.
Oh, that's so funny. I actually usually host an iftar, but this year I moved and then I was touring. Just have so many Muslim friends, and they help me through some of the hardest parts of my life, like after I was going through a breakup, after, you know, I was struggling with my mental health, like some of my closest friends are, it's not like I seek them out. It just so happens that a lot of them.
You just attract Muslims.
Yeah,
That's why we're sitting here.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
And I think that more Hindu people need to openly be Muslim-philic.
I love that.
There's so many.
Love this.
There's so many Hindu people who are Muslim-phobic. Islamophobic is the word.
Yes. Okay.
There's so many Hindu people who are Islamophobic. I'm like, for what? It's so like, you know, I just can't. I know that, you know, the Hindu-Muslim constant fighting has like thousands of years of origin, but I host an iftar every year, and I'll just let you know I'm on my way to bridging that gap. It's a problem across the board. Like, you know, Hindus in Muslim majority countries face dangers, and they are sexually assaulted at higher rates. And Muslims in the Hindu majority, not Hindu majority countries plural, Hindu majority countries, Muslims in India face so much threat to their safety, higher rates of sexual violence, higher rates of assault. And I talk about this openly. A lot of Hindu nationalist, you know, accounts will accuse me of not talking about Hindus in Muslim majority countries and only talking about Muslims in Hindu majority countries. But my stance on social justice, I'm saying this right here, Spotlight with Sandalina exclusive. My stance on social justice is I lead with empathy, always. And I will never, ever weaponize political violence to incite hate towards a group of people. At the end of the day, I am Hindu. I was raised Hindu. I attribute some of my best qualities and the qualities that I'm proudest of in myself to the fact that I was raised Hindu. And I also know that if India tomorrow were to become a Hindu country, that just like any other religious country, that would be enacted by means of government violence, and that would put so many non-Hindus in danger. Yeah. And what Hinduism taught me is to lead with empathy and kindness. And many of my peers could brush up on the scripture because they seem to have forgotten. Because there are very many like young fascists. They're like 22 years old. Right. They go on Instagram and they're like, India needs to get rid of the Muslims. And I'm like, bro, like, what? No one is scared of your computer science major ass. Like, please go finish your junior year at UC Berkeley. Stop inciting the religious war. And that's just what it is. Like, man. I just think that Hindu nationalists are so misguided. Like, and, you know, the Bhagavad Gita says that any path to enlightenment is an accepted one. Yeah. Right? In that, like, if someone else is religious and pious and also leading their life with kindness and empathy, that is okay. So these, like, Hindu nationalists, like, young fascists, like, going on Instagram being like, Muslims are ruining India or whatever, like, they're not, like, that's not what Hinduism is about. Yeah. And anyone who tries to weaponize any sort of political violence to incite hate on any minority group is a bad person. You're a bad person. Spotlight with Sandalina. So I said it right here.
There we go. Abby has spoken.
Yeah, there's, I mean, like, some that I was given this platform, and I'd like to think I'm using it responsibly, but like so many Indian kids who were raised Hindu have like reached out to me and been like, I didn't know about, you know, like Hindu nationalism. I didn't know what, you know, about the downsides of like not talking about religious nationalism and what it's doing to India.
Yeah. So I want to talk about your stage name choice. Mm-hmm. So you go by Abby. But I believe you have a longer full first name. Would you mind? I don't want to mispronounce it. Would you mind?
Abinaya.
I want to hear a little bit about your decision to go by Abby.
So I was born Abinaya Govindan, and then my parents were enrolling me at the JCC in Staten Island, or Lubbock, Texas. So they got to the JCC, and the people at the JCC saw my name, and they were like, sorry, we can't pronounce that. Especially in 2001, like you see a long name and you're like, I'm not doing that. I had 10 shots with my friends last night. So that's kind of what the JCC teacher said to my parents. They were like, oh, sorry, this name's a bit long. Like, does she have a nickname? And my mom, one of her colleagues had said, like, Abby's a pretty common name in the United States. It'll be easier for people to pronounce. So the stage name actually was just my name growing up. Like, my whole life I was known as Abby. When I got to high school, I wished that my parents had named me Naya instead. Like, that was
Naya's a beautiful
nickname. Yeah, so I wish that was the nickname because I think that Naya is a little bit more desi, and I would have liked having a nickname that was a little bit more desi, but it made my life growing up a lot easier. Like, when I you know, like it's such a hacked, overdone joke, especially by so many comedians. But it's true. Like when I was in school, I knew the exact moment the teacher got to my name on the roster because they would be like, and I'd be like, that's me. Like I'd raise my hand and be like, that's me. And then being able to be like, oh, just call me Abby made my life easier in that moment when I was a kid and I didn't want to, I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to stand out. But then when I got to high school, of course, you kind of want to stand out a little bit more when you're older. So I wish that my parents had given me a more Indian nickname, but I also know that they were just, you know, trying their best.
They were doing what they were doing.
So my mom only spoke to Tamil with me in Tamil in the house because she was like, when Abhi starts going to school, she'll learn English.
Right.
So I'm really grateful. My parents they did really well. Like I speak Tamil really well because my parents like forced me to learn at a young age, which I hated when I was a kid. Right. I was like, this is America, we speak English. But now like, you know, my brain is like a sponge for rules in different languages. Like I also speak Spanish and I was able to very easily pick up the rules of Spanish because I grew up speaking Tamil and English. But yeah, they had no way of knowing that I would have preferred Naya. Like, that's not something you can ask a 4-year-old. So I don't blame them for it. But and then when I started doing stand-up, I just used my name, Abby Govindan, as my stage name.
That's what you go by, yeah.
But I really do regret that because this was my personal name. It belonged to me, and now it belongs to the public. And so, like, if I ever, inshallah, I don't. But if I ever, you know, get hate trained.
Inshallah.
Oh, yeah. Inshallah, I don't. But if I ever get hate trained or, you know, like, controversy comes on me, like, my name now belongs to the public. So I wish that I had come up with a stage name. And then in trying to personalize myself and kind of create more of a distance between my stage persona and my personal life, I started asking my real life friends to call me Abhi. And that was more of a nod to my South Asian heritage. It feels more right. Like when people call me Abhi, it just feels more like natural. And then so Abby belongs to the public and Abhi belongs to like me and my friends and my family.
Yeah. I want to understand, you quoted, I believe it was an NBC, that you had talked about feeling like you have to address being a minority in your content. Do you feel like you still have to do that to this day? Or do you think that's something that you've been able to toss aside now that you've built a name for yourself?
I don't think I ever had to toss aside that. I think I just speak to my experience, and my experience is that of an Indian woman, but I don't have to quantify it. I love being Indian. It's a part of who I am. But I don't ever feel like anything I talk about is ever overtly about being Indian. I think I'm just existing in the world as like a silly, chaotic person, and I also happen to be Indian, which is nice. And I feel in existing in these spaces, I'm like, if I'm empowering other people or making them feel more visible and seen, then that's a plus. But even if I don't make people feel that way, I'm doing this for myself mostly.
You talk about going from being an annoying internet fangirl once upon a time to someone who opened for him. And might I also mention now somebody that's doing their off-Broadway with his support because he's the one presenting you. How does that feel?
So amazing. I mean, so the director, Greg Wallach, is the one who wrote and co-produced Homecoming King with him, like co-wrote and co-produced Homecoming King. So Greg and Hasan were just like stand-up comedy friends who like we're doing stand-up comedy together, and then Hasan said like I want to do a solo show, and Greg helped him write it and helped him direct it and helped him like put it on. They also did off-Broadway, Cherry Lane Theater over a decade ago, and then it was bought by Netflix, and his entire life changed. And Greg also consulted on the other 2 Netflix specials as well. A comedian like me would not be able to exist without a comedian like Hasan. Like he was doing the mixed media, and my show has mixed media, and I don't know if I'm plucky enough to trailblaze. Like I think it takes a lot of bravery to do something new in a space where you're already kind of the odd one out because of your heritage. But I think I am just plucky enough to look at the trail that has been blazed before me and walk it with ease.
You're making it your own, I would say, too.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. And it's, I mean, Hasan is obviously the most visible one right now. I totally understand. It's like so natural for people to be like to see me and compare me to Hasan because they see 2 Indian stand-up comics and run with it. And I welcome that. Like, it's true that he's had a humongous impact on my life. But I think that there were so many building blocks to get to me as a person, and only discussing me and Hasan in the same conversation does a disservice to him also, because he's inspired so many comedians who aren't South Asian. But
Yeah, that's true. That's a really
and
good
to
point.
only narrow his impact to the South Asian next generation of comedians downplays the exact impact
reach and the
he's
breadth
had,
of his
because
work,
he's
yeah.
not only famous in South Asian circles, he is like fully world famous.
Yeah, he's an icon.
And so it just feels so amazing to have these two comedians who shaped me so much, and had an impact on my stand-up journey be involved in this. I feel so honored and so happy.
Yeah.
And it feels very
beautiful.
full circle.
I was just going to say full circle. You're doing off Broadway. They're both key components of this coming together, and it makes sense. It's beautiful. And on a final note for the audience, do you have any advice to any women that want to pursue comedy?
Yeah, just like stay true to yourself. Like just stay true to yourself. Just do it. It's gonna be hard. You're gonna be bad for a long time. With stand-up comedy, you have to be bad before you're good. And even when you're good, you're still kind of bad. I mean, like I opened for a famous comedian a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't bomb, but I didn't do well. And it was the first time I'd felt nervous in like years. So trust the process. The process is the process for a reason. So many people before you have gone through the process. Many, many people after you will go through the process. And the process is what's beautiful. Like, if I could have a button and click it right now that says like gain 5 more years of experience of comedy in this moment, I think 5 years ago I would have clicked it because I just wanted to get as good as fast as possible. But now I've learned to really enjoy the journey. So today, if that button was in front of me, I wouldn't click it, because right now I know I'm good, but I know that 5 years from now I'll be better. But the 5 years from now can't happen unless I experience it, unless I go into more places that make me uncomfortable, do poorly, or do better than I expected, get a better understanding of the psychology of audiences, and get to a point in my career where 10 or 15 years from now, I can confidently walk into any room and know that I'll make them laugh because of all of the experience in my belt. And at the end of the day, I could pay for all the Instagram ads, I could hire all the PR firms I want. But when you move an audience member so much that they immediately text everyone they know and say, you have to check out this up and coming stand-up comedian, I think she's the next big thing. That is more of a valuable cosign than even the best PR agency. And I know I've heard so many people like wait in the meet and greet lines and say to me, like, I only came because my friend went to your show in Chicago. My dad went to your show in DC, and they texted me and they said, you have to go. Here's the link. Like, you have to buy a ticket. And so many boyfriends are dragged to my show. that makes them at the end. They're like, I didn't expect to enjoy this as much as I did. Or so many white boyfriends are dragged to the shows. Which, listen, I make fun of Indian girls who date white boyfriends, but ladies, you're diversifying my audience pool. So thank you for that. So I think authenticity has carried me really far. I think people find it really refreshing that I don't shut up.
No, it's great.
Or that, I'm like really candid about like, I'm always like free Palestine. Like I'm always like Hindu nationalism is destroying society. You get signed by an agency and suddenly you find yourself not sharing free Palestine posts anymore. Just know that people are making fun of you and calling you cringe for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As a consumer of content that actually has a lot of opinions on the phenomenon you just described, it's embarrassing. Thank you for those beautiful words of wisdom.
Thank you for having me. This is so
thanks
fun.
For coming on.
Like, comment, subscribe.
There we go. The Holy Trinity is what they call it.
The Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity. Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. That's all for today. Tune back in next Sunday for the next full-length episode. And in the meantime, I'm your talk show host, Sandalina Sattar, signing off.